You mad, bro? The mad scientist will see you now. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the 213th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. If you missed last episode, go check out my friend, Miss Tina Forsythe. She is an entrepreneur, a doer, a mover, a shaker. She's a single mom that turned things around because she had to. She was also working on things already, so she was smart from the beginning. But necessity is the mother of invention, right? She created her own certification program, which is really very cool, really very smart. And I am just a few years behind her. I'm working on something very similar, following that model. So it was great to hear from Tina on how she did that, how she's growing her business, which is helping others grow their business. So check out the episode number 212 for insight and motivation from Tina. Our next episode will be the last of my interviews for who knows how long. I've got a young entrepreneur doing some big things, Joshua Fechter, and then I've got some changes coming up to the Sales Podcast. So you will want to stay tuned and see what is up my sleeves. Today we have a good friend of mine for many, many years, Paul Sokol. He is an early employee at Infusionsoft. They used to call him the mad scientist. He's on his own now, but interesting character. Plays in a band, likes craft beers, but he's got a background in engineering. We get into that, but that very analytical, goal-oriented mind, logical thinking really served him well in the Infusionsoft world. He used to build all of their campaigns, all the free campaigns that you see on their website. He built pretty much all of them. So really smart guy, really understands the system. He's been the behind-the-scenes guru for some big names. He talks about Frank Kern, but many, many big names, big launchers, big internet marketers have called on Paul to help them streamline their systems, to accelerate and improve their launches. So he's definitely a smart dude you want to take a listen to. Check around my website as well, making some changes. Got the Wes method. I'll be explaining that in coming episodes, but it's based on, kind of definitely a new acronym. I'm going to be getting into a lot of this, a lot of my thinking, a lot of the changes in my offering, how I'm structuring things, how I'm positioning myself, and I'll get into what the acronym WES stands for in, where are we? We're on 213 right now. So after we get going with Joshua, then by 215, I'll start diving into the new and improved Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, and the Wes Method. If you hit me up on Facebook or Twitter, I may share a little of that ahead of time. But you can subscribe to my daily episodes as well, my daily blogging. I've been pretty consistent with that for a couple of months. I think I've done 67. I've missed 2 days out of those 67 thus far. Pretty dang good, if I should say so myself. So look around the site. You'll start noticing a few little subtle changes, nothing dramatic, but a lot more use of testimonials. Gotten some great successes very recently. I'll be sharing those as well. I'm going to be on the road a good bit the next few weeks. Next week after this episode airs, I'll be at Infusionsoft's PartnerCon. Got a tabletop there, and I'm speaking as well. The following week is we get into, we're going to be Entrepalooza for Entreport, and then I rush down to San Diego. So that'll be up in Santa Barbara. Then I'll head down to San Diego. I'm speaking at a chiropractors conference, helping them with Infusionsoft as well. I'm speaking later in October at Jackie McClenahan's speakers training event, and then heading over to Inbound in Boston, Cambridge, with HubSpot. So interesting, busy time frame coming up. I will be still publishing this on time, though, so don't you fret none. But now let's bring on Mr. Paul Sokol, the mad scientist. Paul Sokol, the mad scientist, all the way from the greater Phoenix area. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful, beautiful day out here, sunny as always.
Unless you're in a monsoon, like when I was there 2 weeks ago, and I felt like I was back in the South, man. What the heck?
Yeah, that was nice. It reminded me of the South, too. Being from Florida, I appreciate that kind of rain, but there wasn't enough of it.
Yeah. I hear you. Well, you and I go way back.
Super way back.
Back in the Infusionsoft days. I mean, I became a partner in 2008, and were you already working for Infusionsoft or joined right after?
I was a customer in 2008, so that's when I would have started Jive Systems in grad school with my buddy Will, and that's where I actually got exposed to Infusionsoft for the first time. So I actually used Infusionsoft to build and grow a business. The business is still running today on Infusionsoft.
Oh, cool.
So it looks like we got started at least using this. So you remember the big gray settings drop down?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that thing? Oh, man, that was okay. So, yeah, probably right around the same time then we started using the software. And then I became an employee in 2011.
Oh, not till then?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I was a customer for a long time. We used the software as much as we possibly could. And that's why it made sense to join as a coach all those years ago, because I just knew it so well.
So you became what they affectionately refer to you as the mad scientist, creating all of their campaigns, the campaign of the month. But your background is in electrical engineering, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My master's is in digital signal processing, and I got that from University of Central Florida. Go Knights! So.
Digital signal processing.
Yeah.
And that just flows right off the tongue and
Yep.
right into marketing automation, right?
Naturally it does.
So for those without an imagination, though, can you walk us through how that happened?
So the journey is as such. I was going through, grad school. Electrical engineering is like a giant math test, at least the undergrad. Seriously, it's like a giant math test. And then grad school is like, okay, go apply it by yourself. And you can't relate to anybody else because nobody knows what you're talking about. Like, figure it out. So in that point in my life, when I was in figure it out mode, is when I started Jive Systems, which is a business class video email platform with my buddy Will Franco. And I had known Will for forever. He's kind of like an older brother and a mentor that I never had. So it was just perfect. He could bring people in the door, and he needed me to help train them once he brought them in. And then that's where I learned to use Infusionsoft for, basic follow-up and things like that. And then we got more advanced into workflow and using it for support. So I got good at the automation piece because back in the day, that was legacy. So it wasn't this visual campaign stuff. You had to understand in your head that this form or this purchase needs to stop these 6 sequences, which may or may not be running, and then start this one. But you had to have that in your head. So I guess as an engineer, it just made sense. There's just a bunch of if-then, a bunch of triggers. And in electrical engineering particularly, there's a discrete answer for absolutely everything. There's a reason why. So the automation made sense to me. So I didn't start off necessarily loving the strategy part of it or the messaging of it. I understood. It made sense because I came from direct sales, selling knives. So I understood follow-up and the general, psychology of customer support. So that's kind of how I got exposed to marketing automation. And then I just happened to be really, really good at the software, mainly because Will is amazing at customer experience and just understanding it and getting it. And that's why we used Infusionsoft all these years ago, because he looked at all these different available systems. And he's like, Infusionsoft is like the one we need to watch and where it's going to go places. And this is where we should build our business.
Right.
And he was right.
So how do you end up becoming an employee? And then after that, we'll get into how you came to be an entrepreneur again.
Sure. So I became an employee. The agreement with Will was always go to grad school, get to grad school, graduate, get out of here. which was about 2 years to get the business ramped up. And by that time we had employees and business didn't need me. So I left Jive Systems, and then it was, hey, you're this nerd with a master's degree with no industry experience other than a small internship in undergrad. Go find a job. And basically 3 months later, it was to the point where I was going to have to move back in with my parents because the hiring wasn't working. This was in like late 2010. So the engineering industry it just so long to hire, and it was just not working. So I ended up switching coasts and working basically at kind of like an incubator-ish thing with one of my buddies that I knew from college. And so that's how I made it over onto the West Coast. And then when that stint was over, I could either choose to go back to Florida or try and stick it out on the West Coast. And that's when Will, again, Jive Systems Will, he's like, well, Infusionsoft very well, and they're out there. See what's up with them. Are they hiring? And they were hiring for a success coach position. So through a series of adequately timed, miracles, I ended up being able to get to the interview process and, twice and getting hired and making it out to Arizona.
So that's right about the time that the Campaign Builder was coming out, or was it? It was like 2011, 2012, right?
Yeah, Campaign Builder came out. Man, I'm going to be nerdy. I think that was like R24 or R25. So release 24, 25. I think we're on like 56 right now. It's ridiculous. So that would have been like April of 2012, I think. So I had been working there for maybe close to a year before Campaign Builder came out. So definitely taken my legacy skills to the next level for about a year. And then Campaign Builder comes out, and the coaches, we all just naturally gravitated to it because it's beautiful. It's like it's a Frank Kern quote. He says it's the Campaign Builder is like a whiteboard that spits out money. And like that's literally how it works. And back in 2012 when this first came out, all the coaches saw this and were like, whoa. And so we had like training sessions on it, and we were playing around with it, and we saw how powerful the tool was. And that's when I realized that maybe I didn't realize it maybe as clearly as I can share it now, but I realized I wanted to be like one of the best in the world at that, at automation using Infusionsoft. Because it's cool, man. You can create such amazing experiences.
But you always had a little side hustle, right? I mean, you've got a program to clear out your inbox, and it seemed like you were always tweaking on something.
Yeah.
Right.
Never really any products of my own to sell. Like every once in a while, somebody back from college would bubble up and I'd help them migrate a website to WordPress or something, so something like that. But I was full-time at Infusionsoft, and that's basically what I made my money doing. But you're right. I was always tweaking and experimenting and tinkering. Like the inbox zero idea. I'm all about efficiency and workflow. And it's not my idea, this process, but I figured out a way for me personally that works really well using Gmail. It's a combination of Gmail and Toodle-Do. So it's like a blending of like the get stuff done, getting things done methodology with like an inbox zero thing. Yep. So yeah, I could probably turn that into a product. And I know at one point I was considering seeing if I could run that as like some kind of training program to teach people how to set up their Gmail like that, but never really gotten anything off the ground, again, because I was employed full-time super happily at Infusionsoft. And
right.
Yeah.
So working behind the scenes, I mean, you got to work with some big names, right? But you also got to work with a bunch of people brand new. I mean, what have you seen, like, are some common attributes that successful people have and that the failures have? I mean, is there anything you see that stands out? Like all the failures tend to do this and all the successful people tend to do that.
Well, maybe it's the way that you just asked the question, but it's the successful people fail and the people that fail don't even fail once. What I mean by that is Sometimes I look through my list of campaigns in my app and I'm like, wow, I actually was trying to do that at some point. Or, oh yeah, that's right, we did this one thing. Like, there's been so many things that I've like maybe half done, or I've totally done it and it just didn't do what I expected. And I've noticed that in successful people too. They'll just try stuff. That's why I love being on some of these A-lists, like email lists. Guys, well, you mentioned I've worked with guys like Frank Kern, Ryan Dice, and, you know, big names like that, you know, help them build their campaigns. And the way that they just try different things out, you know, we'd argue they're reasonably successful, you know, and they just try different things, you know. At least once a month, there's some different little email coming from Frank with some neat little. Now I see it as a neat little tactic. Like it's like, if you're familiar with how theater works or live stage, like when you're watching it, you understand that there's an army of people behind those side curtains, like doing stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like an anthill. You got a couple walking around outside, but underneath it's just this bustling colony of life. So the successful people just try stuff.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes stuff bombs, and that's okay. And sometimes your ego gets hurt, man. That's probably my biggest challenge, is that I'll have this, quote, great idea, and, like, I'll execute it, and then it'll just crap. And I'll be like, man, it felt like such a good idea. But as long as you can be authentic with yourself, because the data doesn't lie, you know, the data doesn't just how you feel. The numbers are just the numbers. You add whatever meaning you want to it. And the people that fail, I think, just don't even get to that point. They never they'll half execute something,
right?
But then they won't actually ever do anything with it. You know, if I make a sequence where I end up writing like 6 emails for these weird conditions and nobody goes through any of those weird conditions, well, hey, at least
now you know.
Exercise and writing some emails. Yeah, now I know I don't need to get, you know, 3 clicks deep into you know, 2 major milestones for this to happen, you know?
Well, you know, in my experience of hiring people, either full-time or contractors, and just more times than not, it's just a miserable experience. But I'm always, I'm no longer surprised, but I was constantly shocked in the beginning at how much I had to beat into their brains that I said, I have no sacred cows. If you can convince me that a neon purple and pink flashing website with Flash playing Air Supply at level 10 will convert, then I want you to build that website for me. Right? It's just show me what works. You know, it's like I'm bringing you on to either increase traffic or increase conversions or increase sales. I mean, something specific. Help me make that happen. Right? Here are my ideas. And they're always like, they'll come back and, what do you think about this? I'm like, have you tested it? You know, why do you ask me what I told you already? I like conversions. I like money. You know, go make that happen. And then just, well, it boggles my mind. And it just reiterates to me, reconfirms how, I mean, most people really don't know how to market. People that call themselves marketers are typically graphic designers, right? They like pretty stuff, or they're tinkerers. They like fancy gizmos and technology for technology's sake. Like, look at this, man. When they opt in, this triggers 17 APIs. It fires off to 41 different programs. Dude, we'll send them a text in Russian. You know, it's like, wow. You know?
Great. The value that adds to the relationship is immeasurable.
Yeah. It's like, how does that help? You know, like, and how long did you spend on that? You know, it's like, because I'm not paying you for that development time because I don't have any Russian prospects. You know? I mean,
yeah, but you're right. I mean, I'd like to consider myself a decent study of, you know, direct marketing and online copy and, you know, obviously selling. You know, I think that's probably the number one quality to be successful online is you need to know how to sell. Like, I don't think there's any substitution for direct sales, just getting in the trenches and just being shut down so hard so many times, asking for that order,
right?
Until you're just with it, that sometimes stuff doesn't work out. Like, you know, for example, working on a campaign right now with a client, and we're targeting a viable target, 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 and we're targeting and we can generate, and I'm setting all this up. I'm able to generate like clicks, and for whatever reason, the opt-ins just aren't working. The strategy is not there. We've tried a couple different iterations, and to me, the strategy seems off. But but I'm not flailing around there on my own, It's like, I know what to look for. I'm like, okay, we're like intentionally testing like 5 headlines with a bunch of images. We're like, turning stuff off if there's like literally no click-throughs, and because we're able to get decent click-through rates, but it's breaking down after that. Okay, well, now we can work on fixing that. And most
How do people get started, though? Because I have people all the time. I've sold Infusionsoft now for 8 years, and people would say, well, what about A/B split testing in an email?
Sure.
And I'll ask them, how many emails are you sending now?
Yeah.
Well, not very many. So I'm like, okay, why don't you send the first one?
Exactly.
But it's hard. It's like I love what you say, successful people fail, and the failures never fail once, right? So how can they even get started to even pull that trigger the first time, to even have something to test?
Okay. Great question. The highest level answer that I can give is you need to be abundantly clear on exactly what you offer, and you need to be abundantly clear on who you're targeting that cares about it. And I mean, that right there could be tomes. I'm sure you and I could sit down and write books, and probably have at this point on those two topics. But that's how you get started, because once you understand those two things deeply and like intimately, and like you've fallen in love with the audience that you're targeting, and you've truly fallen in love with the problem that you're solving for, then figure out where can you start testing.
So I'm in a group, a private group, and this question literally came up. I read it this morning. A guy either posted it late last night or this morning, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing this email a day thing, blah blah blah." He's like, "I get it," but he says, "I'm not really an expert at anything."
Sure.
He's like, "I don't know what to offer."
Okay.
So I mean, that's a common theme that I see with people. I mean, do you have any insights on helping people like that find what they're good at and what they could go after?
Sure. I'm gonna rip some of Frank Kern's advice from this recent report he did on consulting, because it's so simple. The way that he explains it is just so like, duh. Yeah. It's basically like, if you can do something for somebody faster than they could do it by themselves, there is value there. And if it's a great enough value, they'll pay you to do it. So there's got to be something, and it may not be something that the thing that might drive your economic engine may not be the thing you're passionate about, which is not ideal. And ideally, you can find some way to take what you're passionate about and make it drive your engine. But like, let's say, I don't know, let's say that for whatever reason you're extremely gifted at organizing like, for whatever reason you're great and your kitchen's all spotless and immaculate, and people have a messy kitchen and they would pay you maybe $100 to spend an afternoon and go through that. I guess one thing that might help people is try and stop thinking in terms of like time for money. That's not how it works. It can work if you're playing a smaller game, but like dollars for hours doesn't really, scale. I like to do outcomes. So just that example I gave here, again, if you're like really good at organizing or whatnot, can you find someone to pay you $100 to help organize, their cabinets or their pantries or whatnot? And then it's an issue of just scoping down specifically into what exactly is it that you're offering, because there's got to be, rules and, boundaries to all these games you play. But look at those things that you can help somebody do faster than anybody else. And then, once you've done that, don't immediately start building a product for it. You want to make sure that there's, a pervasive need for that. Like there are people that'll pay for that, and that it truly is a problem that you're solving for.
Well, I love that advice. I think we just got to be a little careful. In the beginning, you're going to trade hours for dollars.
Sure.
Because you got to learn, right? You got to become that expert, and you got to get some wins. You've got to get some experience, and to then create that leverage, right?
Of course. And that doesn't mean to say that you're always charging right away dollars for hours, but maybe you're finding 3 test subjects that you can use, for a
even if you had to do it for free, right? Just to get some momentum, just to get some feedback, and you may fail, right? You may go, oh, crap. After the second one, you're like, this is no good. Thanks. I need to go back to the drawing board.
Man, that happened to me recently. It was challenging. I responded to an email too quickly, and it just created on the other end not the experience I wanted, and it totally bombed. And I learned from that, and I'll never make that misstep again, but on the first 1 or 2 months being on my own, actually, on my own, that's a lesson that I had to learn at some point. So yeah, you're right. You may have to do stuff for free initially. You may have to, fall down and skin your knee really hard. You may not want to continue doing it, but if it's a good enough offer and it's providing real value, I guess, if there's truly intrinsic value in what you're doing here, you gotta remember that's why you're doing it.
Right. How did these guys, how did Frank Kern get so big? Right? Because he's a mere mortal like the rest of us.
Oh, he's just a dude. He's just a normal dude from Georgia. How did he get there? By spending a lot of his own money on ads and bombing and failing hard. By getting to the point where he got involved with the FTC many years ago because he was just trying so many things and he was just pushing the limits on what was possible that he, broke some big rules, but then he learned a lot from that. It was a really expensive lesson. So the way you get that is just by trying, if you look at my ads account recently, I'm running ads for just little things here and there. And there's probably not going to be any return on that ad spend, at least not way far in the future. But, I'm learning a lot. And it's through that learning that you can then do it for somebody. And that's where you can get paid. And then where the real money comes in is where people are paying you to teach them how to do it.
Is it pride? Is it stubbornness? Is it arrogance, to sit there and I'm going to spend this money. I'm going to figure this out. Something was driving him to swim upstream, basically.
Sure.
Right. When most people would have quit. Most people, they spend $50 on an ad. It didn't work, so they don't do it ever again. Certainly they'll quit after 500. Most will quit after 5,000. Right. But Frank, I know, has spent a ton of money over the years.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, he was nobody, long-haired surfer dude. And then hit it big. So did he know he was going to hit it big? Was he just hoping and then got lucky because he was persistent?
Okay. Well, I think I see what you're getting at. And sorry, I totally cut you off.
No, it's cool.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's a dialogue, my brother.
Okay. Because, he may be spending, a lot now, and these big guys are spending, 5-6 figures a month. They didn't start out like that. I'm not starting out like that. I'm setting campaigns that are running maybe $5-10 over a couple of days just to see what we can do. Because if I can reach, between 100 to 1,000 people, that's enough to get some kind of statistical significance into is something working or not. And then just that's literally just lead generation with social media as the channel. That's just one particular strategy in a myriad of things you can be doing for a business. That's just what I'm playing around in right now. I know that's something other guys have done around playing around in, I'll probably play around in direct mail at some point once I actually have addresses on my list. I don't think I have a whole lot of physical addresses, but when I do, I can start playing around with that.
Well, how do they find that team to fill in the gaps, right? Because in your world, you are that analytical type that comes natural. Most entrepreneurs are the creative dreamers. Right. They can't sit still for 30 seconds, let alone 30 days to track some results.
Yeah.
But it's critical, right? You got to know. You got to be running heat maps and Google Analytics and analyzing your keywords and diving in, so you're not just wasting money hoping something that works. I mean, how does somebody fill in those gaps? I mean, was like Frank just doing everything on his own until he could afford to get a little bit of help, you know? And again, it was just the arrogance, the persistence, the stubbornness that just enabled him to grind it out until he made it?
Probably. It's most likely something that's similar to what I'm going through right now with the financial aspects of a business, you know, where I have to actually look at things like expenses and profits and loss, like stuff I know nothing about. But I know that it's important. I know at least enough that I know it's important. And I've at least grinded through learning the basics of what I need to know. So, like, I'm not an accountant by any means, but I know the general stuff I need to be watching and paying attention for as a solo business owner for right now. So for things like analytics and whatnot, maybe you're not doing heat maps and all that jazz immediately, but you at least know that you need to track it. So if you're going to spend a penny or more on advertising, it's the rule. A penny or more on advertising, you need to make sure you can track conversions somehow in some way, and ideally multiple ways to see how that money got spent and how it worked. So you don't need to become a Google Analytics expert. You don't need to become a Facebook ads expert or anything like that, but you need to be able to at least know how many people saw it, how many people clicked through, or how many letters did we send and how many sent a check back or whatever.
Right.
You just need to know know enough to make intelligent decisions. You know, you talk about people spending, $500,000 on ads and then, giving up. Well, if that $500 was on like a single ad for like one ad set, like that's just a silly waste of money. Like that $500 could easily be here. Let me do some math here. So if you wanted to do $500, you could break that into 25 different ad sets with a $20 budget. So that's basically 25 experiments right there. With a $20 budget, which is a lot. You can do $1 a day on Facebook. The idea is that know where that money is going. Like if you're spending $500 to generate one lead, well, if this is a lead that generates you $10,000 on the back end, okay, well maybe that's okay.
I mean, if you had to start over right now, and in a way you kind of are starting over.
I am
right?
starting over right now.
Going on your own. And let's say money's tight, but you got a little bit.
Sure.
Where would you start? Would you start with running some ads through Facebook?
It depends on how much I understand the offer and the targeting. I have to be really clear about what I'm offering in the first place before I even consider spending money on anything for an ad, online, offline, whatever. Once I'm clear on what I'm offering, I need to get clear on my targeting and then see where does my targets hang out.
Yep.
And then based on where my targets hang out, that's where I start testing and dipping my toe in the waters with money. Now, that's not to say that you can't always do some tests on Facebook to find language that resonates. Maybe you know that the bulk of who you're targeting hangs out in a specific publication, a magazine, for example. So you're like, all right, well, I know that I can get in front of the right people with an ad, that I run. But that's, expensive for a magazine ad, right? So instead of just blowing it all on a magazine ad, run a couple Facebook ads first to get the language down right. Maybe come up with...
Yeah, but Paul, this is so confusing. I hear about Google Chrome and Power Editor, and then there's this dude that keeps calling me, and he says he can guarantee to get me on the first page of Google, and he says Facebook is dead, and I should do Twitter cards, and they say that MySpace is coming back, and I see Gary Vaynerchuk, he's all in on Snapchat, but now there's Instagram stories. So, I mean... Sure. Should I just maybe write a billboard ad and just put that on the interstate?
That's effective too. See, here's the thing. There's more channels than ever to share your message. there's more than ever, even more than there were 5 years ago. There's so many different ways you can get in front of potential audiences. Get in front of where your audience hangs out. If it's fax, send a fax. I don't care. Go to where your people hang out and communicate with them in the manner that they're used to communicating. If I'm targeting, people that are over 65, I'm not going to be doing this hip YouTube series. That's stupid. Right. I'm going to do old school direct mail because that's what they're used to and what they're accustomed to. I might use a billboard if I'm targeting truckers, and maybe I don't use a single billboard, though. I actually tell a story throughout a state across a line that I know truckers go through.
Okay.
Use the channel that is going to be related to where your people are hanging out.
Yeah.
If it's an online channel, great. If it's an offline channel, cool. There's a measurement I have called the online affinity, which is basically, are people pretty much always online? Are they always offline? Or are they somewhere in the middle? It's a measure I put between 0 and 1. Basically, 0 is they're pretty much offline entirely, and then 1 is that they're pretty much online entirely.
Right.
Advertise there, whatever that is. So I can't sit here on a podcast and say, you should use Facebook ads or you should use da-da-da. What I will say is that you can use things like Facebook ads and cheap, quick, digital, almost on-demand advertising for testing larger bits. So, again, it's great for using it to test headlines and things like that. It can be great for testing the response mechanisms. Like if you've got a magazine ad that is driving someone to a landing page, well, you know what? Test that landing page first, make sure that the conversions are decent, and then make sure that, the ad in the magazine is running to that. But it's
well, that brings up...
There's so many tools out there. Use the right tool for the right job, really.
Well, there are. It's just there's so many moving pieces and parts. Because you run an ad. There's one thing to run an ad.
Sure.
And get an ad. So, okay, people are clicking.
Cool.
Well, so now you're driving traffic, but you have a crappy conversion page.
Sure.
You're sending them to a neon purple and pink website playing Air Supply over Flash, which doesn't work on your iPhone. So
right.
now you got to get a better landing page, right? So now the landing page converts, but then what's the web form technology you're going to use? Are you going to try to do it for free through MailChimp? Are you going to spend the big bucks and get a $19 account at Aweber, or maybe a $9 account with ActiveCampaign? Or do you know, like Frank Kern, you're going to go big? Do you know, like Wes Schaefer in 2008, and you're going to plunk down $5,000 back then to buy Infusionsoft because that's where you're going to take your business?
It's a lot in $2008.
Dude, that was a lot of money. $5,000.
That's significant. Wes, I love it because you're just okay. Maybe this will help out the people listening, and maybe for you too. You may have seen this. The very last place that I was at Infusionsoft was a research and development role. I was working on something called the Small Business Success Method, which is that really hard problem of how do small businesses find success, right? That's basically the question we were answering. It was a long, hard, complex, really challenging problem. We developed a bunch of tools and conversations and distinctions to get through that method. One of them was this planning framework. And the reason it works so well is because at the end of it, you have an actual blueprint of what you're working on. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because you're asking these great questions that I'm sure you're getting from your tribe and your people that are listening. And this, I guess, is mainly for them. It's also for you too, Wes, because I know that it'll make sense to you. There's different layers to what's going on here. And you got to know what layer goes under what and in what order to consider it. So you're talking about, what tools do we use? And there's a landing page and all that jazz. You would actually consider those differently. So when you're talking about planning something out, at least for right now, we'll say that there's higher levels, but for right now, we'll say the highest level is the strategy. Just what are you doing? So what would be a general strategy, Wes? What you want to say? Generate leads, get referrals. What's a general strategy that most businesses can use?
Well, most businesses make the mistake of thinking, I need more traffic.
Okay,
but I don't want to feed into that.
Sure.
Because
Well, actually,
most people don't need more traffic.
no.
They need more conversions.
Right.
Okay. And I always say, don't throw traffic at your site until you've got your conversions down.
Sure.
So let's start with better conversions.
Okay. So for example, that's a strategy. So that's a viable strategy. I don't think anybody would argue that getting better conversions would, boost that. So that's a strategy. But if you're thinking about that's the what, how do we do it? Now we're getting down to a little more specifically to the business. So if you're selling with a sales team, obviously generating better conversions is going to look different than if you're just doing it straight online, right?
Right.
But that's at least the how you're doing it. Now, once you understand the how, you would actually start exploring basically the experience or storyboarding out what you were talking about. So like an ad, then a landing page, then a thank you page, and then like a phone call or whatever that is. It's until you understand that your strategy is sound and then that you've chosen a tactic that, like, again, makes sense for who you're targeting and what you're selling and all that jazz. And then you storyboard out the experience. It's literally storyboarding like you do, like directors in a movie do. They draw out each frame of each shot, and they don't care about how it's going to happen. This is the frame that they're going for. This is the shot we're doing. Practical, we'll figure it out later. We can do this in post. Like, they storyboard it out. Once you've understood that experience, now you start talking about the actual content of it. So, like, what's the messaging and all that jazz. And then underneath that layer is the actual technology, or these are the tools that you're using. So this is where you're like, okay, I got to use Aweber, or I need to make sure I have a website with WordPress or whatever. And then underneath that layer is you actually start to get to the people part of it, which is where you start looking at the skills of, okay, who actually has the skills to operate Infusionsoft or operate or blah, blah, blah. So you want to think about it in that order of starting with the strategy and then breaking it down and then further into the experience and then the content and then the technology and the tools, because then you can keep everything organized in one place. Because it's definitely valid to talk about, should I go to an ad, to a landing page, ta-da, and then also have the conversation of, well, what technology do I use for that?
Right.
But you want to talk about it in the right order so you don't lose your mind and you're not squirreling everywhere and jumping up and down like this. Does any of that make sense? I felt like I was just kind of rambling.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I mean, there are many moving pieces and parts. There's just no way around it. And, maybe you start out with one of these all-in-one things. You jump into ClickFunnels or something, or maybe, money's tight. So you got to go, the $3.96, account at HubSpot, or not HubSpot, HostGator. And a free WordPress site, and with a $30 theme, and implement MailChimp to at least build a list. Because you listen to any of the big guys out there, Pat Flynn talks about it all the time. His number one mistake back in the day was he waited years to begin building his list.
Right.
He was creating just great content. Everybody loved him, loved his stuff. And he wasn't collecting email addresses. So, understand, your website is your hub. It's the only thing that you own. So own your website. Do everything you can to send people back to your site and collect their info. MailChimp is free for, 2,500 users or 2,500 names?
Something like that. I don't know. I know they've definitely got that free version, though. That's a great place to get started for sure.
Yeah, get started. Then you can afford to run a couple of little ads here and there.
Yep.
And, nobody gets excited about $1 a day, but, at least you're not losing money. Or the money you are losing isn't, going to put your family in the poorhouse.
Right.
But then you can monitor $1 a day. Right, that's not going. You're not going to get in over your head.
Yeah, it's going to be real easy to check it. And again, you'll grow up to the point where you are going to set an ad with $5,000 budget because you've tested 50 times before this particular ad, and this particular permutation just crushes it. So just dump a lot of money into it.
Yep,
but you'll get there.
Yep. So we're coming up towards the end. I've got your links. I'm going to send people to. I got your paulsokol.me, and you've got a little giveaway I'm going to link to. Could you tell us about that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is especially for podcast listeners. I want to thank you for being here listening with us today here, throwing this together for Wes, this particular link. It is 3 automated engagement hacks for stealth selling. I think that's the full title. It's basically 3 tactics. It's 3 little tactics and tricks that you can use in your automation. Doesn't matter what platform you're using to bubble up engagement and leads. So, for example, doing something like I actually call it a bubble up, where within an email you give a link in the PS or somewhere that says, "Hey, click here and we'll give you a call," that kind of thing.
Right.
The people that are primed for it or that they need a call in that moment, they'll click it. You shouldn't expect like a ridiculous high conversion on that, but if you send it's automated. It's just run in the background, If 100 emails go out and you get 1 or 2 leads from it, well, cool. That's 1 or 2 leads you wouldn't have had in the first place. So, and it didn't cost you nothing other than, putting that link in that email and forgetting about it. So, it's a little PDF. I think it's only like 5-7 pages, something like that. It's a short read. And again, it can be used for anything, whether you're using Infusionsoft or Marketo or any automation platform. We were talking about, I don't know about something like MailChimp, if they can do actions based on like link clicks or anything like that.
Right.
But there may be some way to do something like when someone clicks on a link, it adds them to a separate list, and then you just watch that list for new people. I don't know.
Right.
But the point is, you can learn some really cool tips to use automation to engage people and hopefully get some more sales automatically out of it, because you're just going to get more leads bubbling up.
Yeah, I mean, because automation is key. Henry Ford is a household name because he figured out how to make cars faster.
Yep.
And he did that with a process, right? And so I always tell people, look at what you do 2 or 3 times a day or 4 or 5 times a week and figure out how to automate it. At a minimum, have a process for it, because then you can bring on an intern or a contract or somebody and say, here, go do this.
Yes.
But then again, ideally, you are automating all these little things, because that's the only way you're going to scale.
Oh, absolutely. And in automation, at least when you and I kind of talk about it, Wes, when it comes to marketing, it's just automating a relationship at scale.
Right.
So you just have to understand the relationship you're trying to build and speak to that.
And really, ideally, what you're trying to do is use automation not to create a relationship, but to see who's interested in having a relationship, and then you can focus on them.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to think about it. So it's like a low level kind of pseudo engagement, and then once someone actually bubbles up and you're talking to them, okay. Yeah. For sure.
Because, there's only 3 to 5% of the world, that's ready, willing, and able to buy from you right now, this very second.
Yep.
And so, but maybe you're going to market to, hundreds or thousands of people. So you need technology to help you narrow that down, so you can really focus on those that are truly interested, ready to buy, but they're confused. They need your caring help, your caring attention to really help them find the answer to their solution. So, embrace technology, not that you're going to be a robot, but it'll really help you reach the right people. So
totally
own it, love it, live it. All right, man. Paul Sokol, the mad scientist, all the way from where? You in Chandler? You're in Chandler, right?
Yeah, all the way in Chandler.
All right. Lives within stumbling distance of one of our favorite watering holes. So I wasn't able to see you this last trip. I had every minute of the 2.5 days filled, but my next one will not be so jam-packed. So we will visit that watering hole.
Yeah, you let me know when you're in town. I'll make sure I'm in town for that.
All right, man. Paul Sokol, thanks for coming on the Sales Podcast.
All right, you're welcome. Talk to you later, Wes.
All right, man. Have a great day. Told you he's a smart dude. Hey, be sure and head on over to thesaleswhisperer.com/session 213. Paul has a link there for a cool opt-in, 3 killer ways. 3 automated engagement hacks for stealth selling. It's basically killer ways to leverage technology and automation to grow your sales. It's a great report. Paul is a no BS, non-salesy, non-high pressure dude. So you can opt in with confidence knowing that you're in good hands. Really smart guy, really friendly, does everything he can to help anyone that comes to him. So you have an ally in Paul. Like I said, be sure to check out this episode. Check out Tina's. We got Joshua's coming up, and then we got some changes coming beginning episode 2015 and beyond. Stay tuned. And if you're out and about, if you are traveling, if you're going to be in Scottsdale the week of October 3rd, if you're going to be in Santa Barbara, the 11th, 12th, that time frame, if you're going to be in San Diego, 15th, 16th, if you're going to be back in Phoenix, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, let me know. If you're going to be in Boston for HubSpot's Inbound, let me know. That's the week of the election. I'll be there the whole week. So I don't even know, like the 9th or the 13th, something like that of November. And otherwise, if you're going to be in Temecula, wine country, drinking some wine, certainly let me know, because that's where I'm hanging out. I'm about 10 minutes from there. So love to catch up, hang out with any of my listeners. But as always, thanks for listening. Please leave a 5-star review, share this, comment on it online, invite your friends and family, and remember to sell different.